have a special guest joining us today. We're very excited to have him with us to do a little chat before he spins. Anybody know about the Hieroglyphics crew? Some noise for Hieroglyphics. We have a producer business mind from Hieroglyphics here to talk to us today. I want everybody to give a warm round of applause for Domino. All right. Yep, that's you. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Dom, thanks for coming out, man. We appreciate you being here. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, good. So maybe for those in attendance that may not know exactly what hieroglyphics is and your role in it, could you just break it down for the newbies a little bit?
Hieroglyphics is a hip-hop collective based out of Oakland, California, which consists of Del the Funky Homo Sapien, the Souls of Mischief, which is Tajay, A+, Opio, and Festo, Pep Love, Casual, and DJ Teray, and myself, and we're the Hieroglyphics. We also put on a festival every year, or was every year up to the pandemic, but up in Oakland, California, downtown Oakland, called Hyro Day, which we do on Labor Day, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess.
I mean, Hieroglyphics, especially in rap terms, is one of the most impressive collectives of MCs and producers ever to be assembled, and straight out of the Bay Area. So, can you talk a little bit? This is a record swap event. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with vinyl? What was the first record that you bought and/or acquired? I'll start there.
That I bought with, like, hey, I want this record bought? Yeah, I know this. It was the 45 from the theme from SWAT,
Hey.
which was, yeah, and it was because I'm a child of the 70s, and SWAT was my favorite TV show when I was 5 or 6, and that was the first 45 that I owned. I believe it was also the second, third, and fourth 45s that I owned, because as a 5-year-old might do, I broke it a couple of times. And so, yeah, it was like my first 3 or 4 pieces of vinyl that I requested from my mother and got bought.
Hey Dom, speaking of vinyl, the last time we interviewed you, you told us a story, and it was a backstory about you being in the back of Groove Merchant, and we kind of just talked about it a little bit right now in the back here. Can you kind of let people know a little bit about that history?
Well, Groove Merchant Records was a store. Well, is a store. It still exists, but it's a different location in like maybe a block and a half away from the original spot, and a different owner. And it was it's on Fillmore, Lower Haight, not on Fillmore, on Haight Street, Lower Haight. And I believe at the time, you know, I used to go record shopping, and this is probably 1989, 1990, and I used to go to record shops at the stores up at Upper Haight, and one was called Recycled Records, and that's where I got probably, you know, half of my collection in the beginning, or more than half in the beginning, and probably half still remains to be probably half of my collection. And so the guy, I forged a friendship with the guy there, and he saw what I was purchasing, which was, you know, obviously a lot of soul and funk. And he said, "Hey, have you been to that record store down the street?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Well, they cater to kind of this type of music." And so when I went down there, I realized that it was a store that, you know, it was at the time, you know, most records, vinyl stores were, you know, they had their rock section, and they have their soul R&B section. They got the soundtracks, they got the classical, they got the blues, etc. Well, this store was one of the first that I experienced that was focused mainly on soul and jazz only. And so it was right up my alley as far as, you know, being a young sampling, you know, individual, you know, who had grown outside of sampling my parents' collections and my friends' parents' collections, and wanted to find more and more new stuff. And so, and at one point, they told me that they were renting out which was like a storeroom, which was kind of like a studio apartment, And I said, I'm in, you know, you know, living right behind the record store.
Make us sick and tell us how much you paid for that.
Probably 500, maybe
That
less.
spot is going for $7,000 a month now.
In San Francisco, right? And so, yeah, and so I basically was, you know, living out of this studio apartment. I was probably like 19 years old, and you know, making music, going to the record store every day, buying records, and you know, and then that also led me to meet Dante Ross, who is the person who put me on, and who introduced me to hieroglyphics.
I didn't realize that that was the connection there. So you're an artist and producer and DJ yourself. Have you documented your career in your collection? Like, do you have a Fear Itself in your collection? Like, did you keep the vinyl, the stickers, the flats, the flyers? Like, do you have an archive of hieroglyphic stuff?
I do have a pretty significant archive. I'm not sure that I have everything, but I remember when, you know, you used to get all the promo stuff. I'm gonna keep one of each. And I think that the only thing that I think like lasted was all the cassette singles. Where meaning there is no hole in them. Like every Jive cassette single I have, you know. And then I have a lot of the vinyl. I mean, the thing is that I made this joke because I came across like a box of promo cassettes, right, from Fear Itself. It was like the cassette. It was like a promo with 3 of the songs on it. And I was like, well, I did a shitty job. I obviously was supposed to pass these out so people would buy the record, you know. And so, you know, I had boxes of 93 Till Infinity, 12 inches, but, you know, the idea was to give them out so people would buy the records.
Do you still have these boxes?
I don't
Let's talk. We could talk sidebar.
No, I have a couple of 93 Till Infinity 12 inches, but no, not as much as I used to, man.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned a cassette single. My introduction to hieroglyphics was the cassette single of that has Thoughts of the Thoughtful and That's How It Is,
Yeah,
which was very strong. And the moment that I heard it, I could tell that this was different from the other rap that I had been hearing. In no small part to you and your production techniques, can you talk about like coming from where you came from and trying to create the Hyro sound? Did you have certain records in mind that you were searching for that would eventually become all these songs that we know?
You know, I think I was attracted to a lot of like funk, like funk, wah funk, like, you know, Thoughts of the Thoughtful is one of those grooves, right? Which is a Roy Ayers sample. And you know, like, you know, I certainly was attracted to that type of stuff, and also soundtracks, which blaxploitation soundtracks, which yeah. I was really into, and that was like one of the first things I initially was searching for when I was first buying records. And so, but again, it's a lot of that funk, up tempo, wah kind of funk. That was my initial kind of thing that I was most attracted to, and then after that, I started to get more into jazz. Mostly through like Tribe and De La, and listening to them and hearing what they were coming out with, the sound. The Low End Theory was a big influence as far as my sampling a lot of jazz horns and stuff of that nature. But yeah, in the beginning it was probably a lot more like pimp funk type of grooves, you know.
Very appropriate.
Hey Dom, I just saw the Beatles documentary. It was incredible. A lot of high art being made nonchalantly, and it's very like a fly on the wall experience. And it made me think about your career. Have there been moments when you're the fly on the wall and just sort of it felt like you've seen magic happen?
You mean in the studio when we were doing
Yeah,
it?
just hieroglyphics, your material.
It's hard to feel that in the moment. You know, it's like you know you're doing something good, but you know, I don't think we ever thought, oh, this is classic. Really? You know what I mean? I think we were like, I think in the beginning, right? I think everyone's aim in Hyro was to basically show everyone, particularly in the East Coast, that that they could rap as good as anybody, because the West Coast at the time was more known for like mob and pimp and gangster music, and people kind of dismissed the West Coast as that only. And so I felt like, I remember that being pretty much their aim as MCs, was like, we're better than them, and we're about to show that we're better, and we have the attitude that we're better, and we also rhyme off the top of the dome better, you know. And so that was kind of more the attitude that and we knew what we were doing was good music. Like, we were all, every one of us was super hip hop heads who bought everything that came out. And so we certainly knew that we were as good as anybody that was out there.
But were you in the 93 Till session of the song?
Yeah.
So you walked out of there and you guys didn't feel like this is going to be the song 30 years later?
Well, we knew that it was good, right? I mean, the story behind that song is A+ had, who did the beat, he had made it a few nights before, and he had played it for Pep Love. And Pep Love was going to use it, right? And now Pep Love's recollection is, yeah, maybe, but it didn't was like, oh, this is it, because Pep Love doesn't remember the story until 10 years later, when Plus was still first telling the story. He didn't remember it, so it wasn't like it was his per se in his heart. But anyway, we had recorded the majority of, I guess, what we had on tap that day, and then we're like, so what else are we gonna do? We still have some time in the studio. A+ goes, oh, I'll play some beats, and he goes, played a few beats, and then he goes, I have this other one but Pep, I think, is gonna use it. But the Souls had a rule that anything that they made, they get first dibs on. And so when he played it, they're like, oh, hell no, we got to get on this, And then they went and laid it down. And, I think we all knew it was a really good song. It was one of the better songs. And I think one of the main reason was because it's so different from anything, right? Like, you could say a lot about 93 Till Infinity, but the thing that, to me, that stands out is that it doesn't sound like anything before or since. I mean, there were a few records that I think people kind of tried to get that sound, but it stands alone. In 1993, if you do a 1993 hip-hop playlist, that doesn't sound like anything else, where if you listen to a few Gangstar and a bunch of stuff, they sound like they're from 93. But 93 Till Infinity truly is a trend-setting style of song, at least in my opinion. And which is why I think even now it's as big as it even was in '93.
Huge. Yeah. And Premier had the sample. So DJ Premier had the same sample. He used it on the song name is escaping me, but DJ Premier had the same record that A+ sampled for that, and didn't use that part, which is
right.
Effing amazing to me.
Was it for Group Home, maybe?
Maybe.
I didn't even know that, though. That's a trip. I didn't know that.
Dad Bod Rap Pod.
That melody, man. That's the part.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, now that you guys have been around for a while, like, what's fan response like? Do people come up to you and tell you how much the music means to them? Like, is that a common occurrence? I'm assuming you don't wear the Hyro hoodie and mask everywhere you go to be identified so easily on a stage. But like, do you get people coming up to you and like expressing the love for the music?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been around long enough that most of the people that really, truly love it were 18, 15, 16. And, I think that goes with any music. The music that you love during that period of your life is always going to stay with you. Always going to have more impact on you. And so, yeah, like, there's always been a lot of people that say, oh, your music helped me through tough times and stuff like that nature. But now I think the thing that, kind of makes me, impresses me more now is when I meet somebody who's 21, who's like, oh, this night, you guys, and I love you guys. And I'm like, how do you know us? Your brother.
My parents bumped you when I was growing up.
Sometimes it's that, or like, now with the internet, people can go down a rabbit hole, hear one song they like, and then it leads them to something. And next thing you know, they're a fan,
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it just speaks to how the hieroglyphics legacy kind of keeps radiating out. Let me ask you a question. We're around a bunch of records. Want to ask you about sampling. So you've done a lot of sample joints, of which we will not snitch on any here, but There's still kind of a debate raging about sampling versus playing the music. And did that ever, is that something that you ever wrestled with? Did you ever kind of feel that way about sampling as an art form?
No, I mean, I felt like they were just two different methods to the same, result, right? It's like what you wanted, the sound that you wanted. And at the time, the gritty kind of sound of old records in the studio that, the drums that were made in the 70s or late 60s or whatever had a certain sound that you really couldn't easily replicate live. And so I think that, that's the sound that, we wanted, and so that was the best way to get that sound was via sampling. But now there are songs that we did that where we incorporated live music in there too. And so I don't think we were ever like one or the other. I know I wasn't one or the other. But my only issue was always with the people that were like sampling isn't an art, it isn't real music, it's stealing. And I think that most of the people that said that, probably only knew about sampling through like You Can't Touch This or songs like that.
Beat jacking.
Yeah, where they basically took the whole thing and didn't do anything different to it other than rhyme over it. And so I think that those who were into the real hip hop producer diggers were layering things from different sources from not even the same genre, And so, I think that, I always just really was defensive about people that said acting like sampling was just solely stealing. And so that was the main thing. I always was, because if you look at like Dr. Dre, one of my favorite producers, a lot of that NWA stuff in Eazy-E records, they were both. He was sampling and he had live instrumentation. Gangsta Gangsta is the Steve Arrington Weak in the Knees groove, but they replayed it. And so I didn't really feel negative about records that had live instrumentation. I felt like it was just two ways of getting what you wanted.
We talked a little bit about your history, and all you guys remain pretty active. I know that Tajay has that Rap Nor project. I know Dell's doing some stuff with Cool Keith, but can you just kind of give everyone an idea of what you're working on and what the crew's working on these days?
The collective or me?
Both.
Everyone's basically doing their own individual stuff right now. Dell's always doing music, and like you said, he did a project with Cool Keith, where Cool Keith is mostly doing the production, believe it or not. And he's on a couple of songs, but it isn't like what you expect, and it's good. It's a lot. It's not totally what you would expect from them, so I think that's a good thing, And Dell's always creating. He's buying a lot of equipment. He has new sounds. And so, he's always doing stuff. I mean, everybody else, Pep is, I know Pep is making a record. I mean, everyone is just doing different things. I'm doing just steadily making beats. Me and Dell are supposed to do a project together when I, corral him to, but like the thing with Dell, right, is that you cannot like find him for a while and then he'll say, yeah, I'll do it. And then you'll send him a bunch of beats, pick one, and then next thing you know, he'll send you 10 every song written, you know what I mean? For every beat that you said, pick one to. So, it doesn't exist today, but by tomorrow I could have a whole record, That's just kind of how he works,
That's incredible. Do you feel a responsibility to, or do you try to keep up with modern hip hop? Like, do you listen to new stuff, or are you kind of like, have enough friends who make music where that kind of satisfies that for you?
I don't probably keep up as much as I should since I'm in the industry, and I know how important it is to kind of flow with the trends and to know what's going on, particularly because I also do management as well. I manage Dell, and so it's good to, you should know what the climate is like, but from a producer standpoint, probably not, because I think that hip hop is gone. It's a lot of the hip hop that's coming out today is so far from what I do that I don't feel like I need to get into the position to where I'm like, oh, let me find out what is hot so I can be in that realm. And I I just got to do what I love. That's why I did it in the beginning, is do what I love. And if it sounds good, hopefully people will be attracted to it no matter what the age, you know, like, and that's kind of how Hyro has been able to sustain this long and still have relevance, is because we didn't do the trends. We didn't jump on what was hot.
There's no shiny suit Hyro.
Well, there's no hyphy Hyro record. You know what I mean? And not to disregard, but when you jump on a trend, your initial fan base looks and goes, what, you know? Oh, they see through that, and so you lose them. And then the people that you may have attracted with this new stuff, as soon as you're not doing that anymore, then they're on to whatever the hot trend is. And so I feel like we just do what we do, and it's based in the core of the elements of hip hop, being original, being progressive, adding to the culture instead of regurgitating what the culture is doing. And I think that's worked for us well. And so, you know, I don't listen to as much. What I do is, like, usually every quarter I'll go on Spotify and listen to a lot of new music and make like what I like from this, you know, and it's usually, you know, I use like 15 songs is what I can find, or 10 or 15 songs that I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Are there any artists that kind of newer artists that you really like? Yeah, they're doing it. Nate is a big Corday fan. Yes.
Yes.
I wish I would have bought stock in Corday 3 years ago.
he's. I mean, I've liked him for a while, but he's probably one of my favorite dudes right now. I mean, I really like Anderson .Paak. You know, he's obviously not just straight ahead hip hop. There's a few others, like, you know, but like it's, you know, it's few and far between. I gotta like really go in and delve, like, because if you go through the normal mediums of, you know, the top of the playlist or what's on the radio, or you're not.
We can recommend a good podcast that occasionally does like quarterly, yearly check-ins. What's new? What's good? What's reminiscent of? If you like the old, then you like the new.
Right.
Stay tuned for our year-end recap. So you talked a little bit about Hyro Day, which to me is an amazing phenomenon, because when you look at rap collectives, you know, there isn't necessarily a Wu-Tang Day in New York, right? But there is a Hyro Day in Oakland. Mm-hmm. And can you just talk a little bit about the collective and I know you're not from Oakland, but like the relationship between hieroglyphics and Oakland, and why has the city kind of embraced the rap crew so tightly?
You know, I think you live off your equity, you know, and so I think that the music that we've done has gained us a lot of supporters. I think the aesthetic and what we stand for musically and as artists has garnered a lot of support. I think being positive, you know, in a world that there's a lot of negative, not just musically, but just on the streets, you know, and so I think it's just people embrace the fact that, you know, Hyro and has always been Oakland, and I think it goes back to my initial point about trying to prove that we always represented Oakland, you know. Hyro's always represented Oakland, and I think that people that came up, even those who may not be, maybe they're Too Short fans, or maybe they didn't really like us like that, but they respected what Hyro stood for. They respected that Hyro represented Oakland, that always was like, you know, the first soul song on 93 Till Infinity, the first thing you hear is, tell me just what you know. And it's like a Too Short sample. So it's always representing and staying true to your roots, I think, is probably the reason why the support is there. And I think Hyro Day started as an idea of just a way to giving back. You know, it was a free event for a lot of years. And we were losing money putting it on, you know, like, but we felt like it was needed, and we were also able to expose a lot of new artists through the festival. And so generally the festival has like the main stage, which is kind of like most groups with a similar aesthetic to ours, like, you know, Black Thought performed, or, you know, Talib, or, you know, and then we have a stage that's more along the line of like DJs and maybe some underground hip hop more, and then we have a stage that's focused more on younger groups that are mostly local, and so I think we try to expose groups that may not have been able to have exposure for a while, but and then they end up being bigger, and blowing up, and where we can't afford to have them anymore.
That's kind of how our podcast works as well. So we definitely appreciate you coming down and being here for the Eastside Record Swap. In closing, what is the one record in your collection that you would absolutely never part with? What is the crown jewel of your collection?
Shoot, I don't know, man.
That will never end up on Discogs.
Hey, everyone has a price, man.
Hey.
That's hard to say, I never really. It's hard to say, man. I don't know. I don't know if there's one. There's probably a stack of them that I wouldn't, part with. And so it's funny because every once in a while I'll go on the Discogs top. They have a list every month that's the top biggest selling or most expensive records. And then one day I looked and one of the records I had was on there, and I was like, whoa. And so then I started going on a kick where I started checking on what the value of all my records were. And then when I realized that there were people willing to pay that much for a record, I was like, well, maybe I would part with some of these records. Because up to then, I've never ever thought about selling any record.
Oh, really? That never crossed your mind?
It never crossed in my mind. But when I realized that I had one that I guess it had sold for $3,500, and I was like, whoa, man, what else do I have, And so, because I never thought about selling anything, I've never been, and so I don't know what I don't know which is the most important one,
Yeah. Or you're starting to know what the most expensive ones are, though, which is
I do know.
really
I
important.
do know. I think I know what the most expensive one, because Discogs dropped dime.
Good old Discogs. Domino, we want to thank you for coming out. Round of applause for Domino, y'all. Thanks for being a part of this.